Hello and welcome to DigiTales episode 14, season 2. My name is Faizan Syed, the founder and CEO of East River, and today I have one of the top marketeers from the country on the show. He has worked on some of the biggest brands like P&G, Henkel on the global level, and he's worked at Shan Foods and is currently at Tapal. He is one of the few people to implement a blue ocean strategy. He's on multiple boards, so he has a complete idea of how other industries are working as well. And in his free time, he's interested in sports management. How are you doing, Adil, today?
Hi, Faizan. I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thanks a lot for joining us. The first question I have, you have been a marketeer in multiple markets for 18 years, dealing with consumers, consumer behavior, what triggers consumer patterns, and so on. Tell me, is there one common trend you have seen across all consumers in every market, and what is that trend?
Yeah, so I mean, the first thing you have to remember is all consumers are humans, and that really boils it down and makes it very basic across the world, right?
Mhm.
And one of the trends, if you really ask me to pin down, and this is something which purists frown at, is convenience, and that's simply because everyone's getting time poor, and convenience is something all consumers seek, whether it's single parents and pet owners in Germany, or whether it's multinationals living in the UAE, or it's even a local Desi family in Pakistan. So all of them are looking for convenience, and it's marketeers' jobs to deliver that, whether in products, in packaging formats, or in the actual delivery of some of the things that we market. So I would say that's one of the most common things that cuts across all across the world.
And convenience, how do you see this convenience evolve as digital starts to proliferate in our markets?
Yeah, it kind of goes hand in hand, right? So digital is basically a medium which is giving us ways of consuming content in a much more convenient manner. So whether it's on the go, whether it's bite-sized content, and consuming it on different mediums across different screens. So वो भी वहाँ पे भी यही हो रहा है, and also in terms of product consumption, it's the same thing. It's the same story. So before, in terms of cleaning, if I had one product that did everything, now I have specialist products. If I had them in a bottle, I have them now in a trigger spray bottle. Similarly for consumptions, if I had things which I had to first go 3 steps to make, now I have it as a ready to drink format. So all of those things are shrinking and shrinking as more and more time gets constrained in terms of people not having enough of it, right? So I think it goes hand in hand.
So you're linking convenience in a way to specialization as well. You're saying that convenience ke liye specialization might be necessary.
Not necessary, but that's definitely one of the routes the world has taken, right?
Right.
So even in terms of, I mean, if I talk about coffee or chai, the fact that we've gotten into these specialist machines,
Mhm.
so that's also a little bit of a premiumization part being thrown in with convenience. But पहले अगर मुझे चाय बनाने के लिए पानी उबालना पड़ रहा है, एंड देन पत्ती डालनी पड़ रही है, और फिर उसको ब्रू करना पड़ रहा है, एंड देन मैं बाकी चीज़ें डालूं और फिर
Mhm.
उसको छान के निकालूं एंड पीऊं. So that's already an exhausting format, and it's challenging people, especially the young ones in Pakistan, whether they even want to have that cup of tea anymore.
Right.
And if I can give them that in a 2 steps less, or a ready to drink format, or in a machine, then that just makes it better. So yes, it becomes a specialist product, but it's also catering to the core need of convenience as well, I believe.
But the thing is that as you specialize, doesn't it make the per use more expensive because you are specializing, you are adding convenience, and convenience brings a cost. And a GDP per capita constrained environment like ours, matlab, does that mean that only a small sector or subsector of our population will then benefit from that convenience?
Yeah, you could say that, but that's great for companies, right? That's where the premiumization comes in. That's great for the bottom line, but that's also why you have a diverse portfolio. So it's not just one size fits all. You'll have some solutions for the lower end of the market, and you'll have some solutions for the higher end.
If I was to build a brand from scratch today in Pakistan, right? I mean, there are few really global brands that have come out of Pakistan. You happen to be at one of them today. You've worked at one before. But if you were to build one from scratch today, which sector would you cover, and how would you go about it?
That's a very interesting one. I've actually written extensively about this, and because when I came back after having spent 10 years abroad in the professional field, the thing that I was obsessed with was, why don't we have a global brand that originated from Pakistan and is considered truly a global brand. So I started looking up these top, 100 brand, 200 brand lists, and I think the longest list I found was a top 500 brand, and Pakistan was nowhere close. I mean, forget
Mm.
consumer brands, कोई भी और brand नहीं था उस list में. And it really got me thinking. And now that I had worked in these foreign environments, and I had worked at MNCs and for local brands, I kind of started making that connection. Okay, what's lacking, and उसमें I will not go too much into that detail, but there were quite a few things, right? What I do feel has started, or is a pattern that I've seen globally, or that can happen at Pakistan for any brand and in any sector, is you have a very strong home base. So firstly, you become immensely popular in your home country. You then start sort of exporting, and you follow the diaspora of the local population going abroad, so immigrating abroad. And once you've gotten those low hanging fruit, you start, because there is a lot of globalization happening and a lot of exposure happening, you start appealing to like minded audiences. So people who are similar to your home country's base. And then, because of global travel and a lot of exposure, you start also appealing to foreign audiences. Obviously usme bhi groups aa jate hain ke people who like to experiment first, and then the mass audiences, right? And I think if you start tracking every global brand today over their 150 saal ki history, that's the pattern that you will find. I think that's the same pattern Pakistan is also following for at least one or two of its brands, which are on their way to becoming truly global. But it's slow, right? And it's not happening very consciously. And I think if people were visionary enough to notice that, they would then help accelerate that process.
But you said it takes
Yeah.
about 150 saal. For example, let's say Coca-Cola, if you take, let's say you take McDonald's, right? And absolutely right, it started in its home market, proliferated there, and then moved on. In today's day and age, with digital and sort of with the globalization and the connectedness of the world, will it still take that long if we
No,
started?
yeah. Yeah. So it shouldn't, right? That's what I'm saying. So pehle 150 saal lage the, but you need to be conscious of that. If you're just going to let things happen, then either it'll happen by accident, or actually it might die down.
Mhm.
So it really needs to be taken by the horns. It can't be something that's left to chance.
Right.
And everything multiplies. So you've seen how technologies have grown, right? If it took 100 years between one major innovation and the other, and now it's taking like less than 5 years or 10 years, that's
Right.
that's how the world works, and that's how it's working right now. So hopefully that's not going to happen. When you ask me which area I would start, FMCG is closest to my heart. I've been in FMCG all my life, food and non-food. So I would love to take a couple of brands that are already existing, and not like building them from scratch, but already existing, and take them abroad.
Right.
If you ask me to start something from scratch, I would first have to spend some time making it really popular and loved in Pakistan before I even thought about taking it abroad. If however, if you asked me कि भाई मेरे पास है मौका और मैं FMCG के बाहर देखूं, so
Right.
I think tech is that space where it's already happening, and probably has the most chance of happening much faster. Having said that, anything that we do in any sector, the proof of the pudding is in the product, right? And the service. So it has to deliver before anything else. So your product or your service has to deliver on its promise first. Do it consistently enough for long enough. That's what will create brand love, and consistency. And once you've got that, then you just focus on obviously availability and distribution, and those kinds of things.
But
So
does it matter?
yeah.
Does it have to be a product or a sector that is known in your country? So, for example, textiles. Pakistan is known for textiles globally for for centuries, right? And so, if someone says, "I'm building a global textile brand out of Pakistan," fine, it makes sense because you have good crop and you've been doing this for centuries and decades and so on. But if we suddenly say, you know what, we're going to start an auto manufacturing company, or we're going to pick up a solar panel manufacturing company, or something that we haven't done, or like maybe chemicals, household cleaning chemicals, do you think that matters in terms of, oh, this country is known for this, therefore it can be a global, or versus, hey, they've never done this before, how are they entering this space?
No, if you ask me personally, I would say it doesn't matter. It'll just take longer, obviously, to convince people, and it'll come down to the quality of the product or service that you're churning out.
Right.
Having said that, it just helps and accelerates the process if you work on a little bit of the strengths that are already there. So, for example, in Pakistan right now, if you were a person with some money on your hands, you would be well advised to go into any sort of import substitution that you could,
Right.
simply because of the costs that we're seeing in terms of the imports, and whether it's parts, whether it's finished products, or whatever. We are already known for sporting goods, but we don't have a single brand that is very recognizable on that front. Although maybe the world uses our footballs and our hockey sticks and our cricket balls, but there's no single brand that you might say, oh, I know this factory out of Sialkot jiska ye naam hai, jo ye product banati hai.
Why do you
So
think
we,
that
yeah,
is? इतने अच्छी products बनती हैं and you're into
yeah.
sporting, the sporting space. Why do you think that hasn't happened?
Lack of vision, I would just put it down to that simply. I mean, we've become OEMs, right? So matlab, lekin OEMs bhi dunya mein have brands like Sharp televisions used to be the best in the business, but they still make screens for everybody. So
Mm,
even though they've died down as a consumer brand, you still know that they'll make a decent screen.
mm,
So us tarah se, matlab, I don't think we ever put a logo on something and then made it big. So if we're making hockey sticks for Grays and Kookaburra, and don't have a local Pakistani MB Malik, for example, let it be MB Malik. I don't care what the brand name is, but at least market it well. वो vision हम lack करते हैं, and we don't tie in, we don't make deals, and we don't do licensing properly or aggressively enough to make sure our brand gets out there and stays out there.
and do you think that's the biggest challenge you face as a CMO today? Is it the lack of vision that you see in people who come into companies, or is it something else?
It's something else. So, I mean, it's interesting you say that, because firstly, that might be a challenge that I see in terms of the business owners taking Pakistan forward, and the massive growth is in the local businesses. By the way, in Pakistan, MNCs are very tied down in terms of restrictions from global and regional dictates that they get. The onus really falls on the local business owners to have that vision and really contribute to the society, the environment, the business community, as well as the talent, right? So, and to provide that kind of thing. And I know we always start comparing with our neighbors, but they definitely have done it differently and better in terms of corporatizing their local businesses. So, वो तो एक challenge है. If you ask me what's my number one challenge as a CMO, the one question I always ask myself in any category that I'm working on is, what happens if people stop using this tomorrow? So
Mm.
what happens if people stop drinking chai tomorrow? What happens if people stop eating biryani tomorrow? And in a country which is a oft repeated stat where 70% of the population is below 30 or 35, these young people may actually do that. So it's not really that ridiculous of a question, right? So for me, the biggest challenge is to stay relevant. And how do I do that? And how do I make my brands and products stay relevant moving forward? जहाँ तक brand की बात आती है, I think it comes down to how I'm reaching and talking to these people. जहाँ तक product की बात आती है, it comes down to innovations and delivery. And like I was talking earlier, the more convenient I can make it, I think the better reach it has then.
And you,
And
you mentioned a very good point. Our population is predominantly under the age of 35,
yeah,
which means that habits are being developed and formed on a daily basis for most of the consumers you're targeting. So that means that your product range, no matter what you're working on, has to constantly innovate
yeah.
and keep up with the trends, the millennials, the Gen Alphas as they're coming up, reach them in their particular mediums that they're using.
Yeah,
Doesn't
talk to them, using the mediums that they're spending time on. We are
right,
getting these stats where they're spending countless hours on different mediums now, right? On their
right,
phones or on social media platforms and so on. So you need to be there, and you can't be there with one size fits all strategy. You need to be very agile and customized, and you need to be creative as well in terms of how to reach them. And
right.
it's a continuous battle of staying updated day in day out. So ek wo hai, which is, by the way, a sort of a contradiction, because you've got the CMOs and the marketing heads who are now in their 40s and 50s, and they're supposed to be talking to these 20-year-olds
Right.
and know how these ever evolving platforms keep working and keep changing. But yeah, that's the challenge. That's the
But
challenge.
doesn't that apply a pressure on your margin? Because on one hand, you have your input costs rising. all your input costs, right? It's becoming more and more difficult to produce product, physical product. And then you're saying that if you're trying to be relevant to different audiences, younger audiences, your marketing costs will rise because you have to experiment with new approaches on reaching those people. So doesn't your bottom line get affected? And how long can a big FMCG type place sustain such margin shrinkages?
No, so I would disagree, Faizan, because I think it's a balanced approach that you have to take, right? So you have to have this mindset of test and learn continuously. You have to allocate some of your budgets to experimenting all the time. So in terms of trying out new mediums or trying out new ways of talking to your consumers, I think that's easily manageable within budgets you've already set aside. Because even within those budgets, you can have portions to dedicated to testing and learning.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes down to the actual product, that's also very interesting because again, you mentioned the blue ocean part in the intro,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where actually practically saw this happening, where a company that was completely reliant, 75-80% reliant on selling one SKU, worked on consciously launching 2 or 3 new products and said, we will put these as our new bet. We went down to the salesman level and said, this is your incentive. You have to sell an X percentage of this new product or new SKU in your monthly targets. And if you don't do it, you don't get your incentive. And right from there, we built it up all the way through the organization, and we saw the results. I mean, within a span of 3 to 5 years, those products became 1/3 of the company. Those products had triple digit growths. Those products became market leaders within their small segments. And suddenly the company was not 80% reliant on one SKU and had a better spread across the portfolio. So you need to start somewhere, and you need to start small, but you need to start. That's the bottom line. Something that's also missing in our local groups is a very conscious and systematic innovation process, which needs to come in. It needs to come in from professionals like me who've been exposed to it in multinationals. And when we get the chance to come in and become change agents in these big local groups, then that's something that we work on and we should work on in terms of putting in place processes like these, and making sure that innovation really becomes one of the core pillars that the company stands on. Some of the multinationals I used to work in used to have KPIs like uh, sales of sales coming from products that were launched in the last 3 years needs to be at an X percentage every single year, which
Mm.
means that every year you need to keep churning out new SKUs or new products. And I think that in the long run, that's a healthy thing. I mean, don't do it for the sake of doing it. You have to have a process that continuously challenges you and it questions you, to make it relevant, but it needs to be there.
And so, if you look at, you mentioned the point of innovation and constantly testing, putting small amounts of budget on testing new and experimenting with new ideas. This mindset, do you think that this mindset is embedded in our education system, the higher education system? Let's say a kid goes to college, decides to do a BBA, then an MBA in marketing. Do you think that that education system has kept up with the way things are changing and with the increased focus on innovation that is required from these fresh graduates?
No, I don't think so. So I actually also taught a semester at IBA in 2017, and before that, I was already getting this feeling that the new graduates are not up to speed, and that got confirmed over there, which is why I designed the way I delivered my course in brand management completely differently and tried to make it focused very much on the practical side of things, which is how you should think of building a brand in terms of shaping it within a calendar year, right? So you work on a sort of an annual operating plan. You review last year's performance. You summarize on key issues and opportunities you're going to focus on. You answer the questions of where to play, how to win in terms of the strategy. You allocate the resources. You make a plan, and then you tackle it. Amongst all of that, you have to do a lot of landscaping exercises, and that involves media landscaping, that involves communication landscaping, and looking at competition very closely, doing a lot of research. So all of that, right? And that's how I try to design it, and that's how it should be done. So that will equip graduates with at least the hands-on kind of skills and topics that they need to look at when they walk in. So that's one.
Mm-hmm.
Even I think failed at putting the onus on innovation or having that kind of mindset. But I think what we did try to do was at least instill people to retain an entrepreneurial mindset
Mm-hmm.
while working in a sort of a job environment as well, because that always works. Having but just having that without having an environment where you're allowed to make mistakes and you're allowed to fail and you're allowed to learn from them and grow, then that's a mismatch. And I
But
think
how do you
that's
incentivize
something
that
else.
though? Because the thing
Sorry.
is, you're saying that so if the education system is not kept up, then it's on the onus is on the company to create that environment where you drive that sort of mindset, right? But how do you drive? How do you basically incentivize that mindset? You know, to ensure that it aligns with profitability, market share, while at the same time it doesn't compromise the existing business.
Yeah, again, it comes down to balance. That's a very common word that we're coming back to, Faizan.
Right.
And it also comes down to individuals, I would think, right? So
Right.
individual team leaders and what sort of tolerance do they have with failure? And ये एक बड़ा interesting concept है के ऊपर मैंने कुछ पढ़ना शुरू किया recently, and that's what is our relationship with failure. Do we let it affect us negatively? Do we let it bring us down and paralyze us, or do we actually learn from it and grow?
Right.
तो वो एक बड़ी चीज हो जाती है. And if you are self aware about that and you're able to instill that within your team members as well, then that's something that can really help the company grow. I know where you're saying कि incentivize करते हैं उसको, and a lot of our KPIs are linked to just delivery of volume and revenue targets or profit targets. और थोड़े से हम दो चार उसमें और चीज़ें डाल देते हैं, and 80% weightage is given to those, and then 10-20% comes on behavioral topics, जिसमें हम थोड़ी बहुत वो मेजर कर लेंगे कि अच्छा क्या इनिशिएटिव लेता है, क्या रिस्क लेता है, क्या चांस लेता है, क्रिएटिव है कि नहीं. तो ऐसा डिजाइंड है. But then it again, I would say, comes down to how we're shaping those goals and KPIs when we're writing those. You won't be able to change everything in one go, right? So we can't change the whole system of KPIs and measurements and appraisals in one day. But it's what you write down. You have that opportunity every year when you sit down with your resource and write down कि क्या KPIs होंगे.
Interesting. So, you know, I was listening to you talk about failure. I literally yesterday was listening to Adam Grant. He's a big American author and a professor at the Wharton School.
Yeah.
And he was giving us a live talk yesterday. And he talked about this one case where two sets of entrepreneurs, literally picked at random, were created and put into two groups. One was a control group and one was the group with the hypothesis. And the idea was that one group believes in their idea as an entrepreneur and goes after that idea with a belief that it will work. The other group was told that you are scientists, you have a hypothesis, and you need to then work with that hypothesis and see if it works out.
Okay.
What they found is that the group that had the belief system, the entrepreneurs that believed in their idea, were 40% more likely to fail than the ones who were scientists. And the reason for that is because they were married to the idea and they were trying to squeeze that idea because it was their belief. Versus the entrepreneur group that said, okay, this is a science experiment. I may not get the outcome this time, but let me tweak these inputs. Let me see what the outcome is. And let me continue tweaking those inputs. And I might deviate from what I originally believed, but I will at least be successful in the experiment. And my takeaway from this was that it's failure, is not, people take it too emotionally. If you treat everything like a science experiment, then it's not a failure, it's a learning. It's
Yeah.
one outcome that did not work. Let's try three others. And
True.
people seem
True.
to forget that.
True.
They take it
Yeah,
apart.
I never thought of it as looking at it as a science experiment, but you're right, because when you fail, supposedly, you've just found another way of it not working. जैसे
Correct.
वो कहते हैं. So, so yeah.
And often they say, वो कहते हैं कि, success is often around the corner of a thousand failures, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you just have to keep at it. And I think I feel that that's one of the things that lacks in our education system is that confidence building जो students को देनी चाहिए कि भाई आप लगे रहो, आपका एक outcome आ जाएगा. और जो mentorship का concept, I believe ये जो entrepreneurial environments है, इसमें I think one of the things that companies can do is really create a strong mentorship environment. So incentivization एक तरफ है, but if you know that you have a mentor championing your cause and you're trying something innovative and they've got your back, you will push even harder.
yeah.
इसमें मुझे tell me one other thing. Your as we talk about these candidates who are coming out of school, is there when you look at a candidate, right? Is there a star candidate, star persona candidate you've defined? Sure, you've got personas for your consumers, but do you have a persona you've created for your star candidate?
या मतलब क्रिएट मैंने नहीं किया, मैंने ऐसे लोगों के साथ काम करके उसको एस्टैब्लिश कर लिया है। ये मेरे दिमाग में एक पिक्चर क्लियर हो गई है, लेट्स पुट इट दैट वे, एंड दैट्स थ्रू मीटिंग दीज वंडरफुली टैलेंटेड इंडिविजुअल्स ओवर द कोर्स ऑफ माय करियर। And things that have stood out are the one that stands out the most is the eagerness to learn. And ये मतलब एक unparalleled किस्म की ड्राइव होती है इन बच्चों में कि they just they have this unstoppable drive to learn and absorb from everything that they're getting involved in, and that's very beautiful to watch also when you're in the position that I am. They ask a lot of questions, they never shy away, they'll never stay quiet in a room. First day they've joined the company, you put them in a room of 10 people, 20 people, and there's a big meeting going on, and they'll never shy away from asking a question. And that's how it should be. They have a lot of positive energy. They don't suck the energy out of the room when they walk in. They actually help lift other people up. They just put their head down and get stuff done, and they focus on getting building a body of work up first before they start asking for कि क्या चीजें हैं. Even in this day and age where पहले दिन ही बंदे पूछने लगते हैं कि अच्छा हमें अगली promotion कब मिलेगी. And one last trait जो कि शायद इतना common नहीं है even in the people that I'm defining is the fact that they have this thing of not comparing themselves early on with their friends and their peers and their and
They don't compare themselves.
their groups. हाँ, वो compare ना करें, क्योंकि ये तो बहुत easy होता है ना कि यार उसको देखो वो BM बन गया 2 साल में, मैं अभी तक ABM हूँ, वो देखो उसको ये गाड़ी मिल गई, मुझे अभी तक ये नहीं मिली. People who are able to not do that, not get distracted and still stay on course, and that I think can only happen if you have this inner faith कि जितना लिखा है उतना मिलेगा और जब लिखा है उस वक्त मिल जाएगा, और बस लगे रहो और सिंसियर रहो अपने काम के साथ, तो वो वाले लोग फिर कम हैं. लेकिन I think all those 3-4 things that I've described, that for me is the star candidate.
उसमें एक मैंने एक I was listening to this one podcast जिसमें they talked about exactly this point, people comparing themselves and setting themselves up for failure. तो बड़ा अच्छा point उन्होंने raise किया था. How can you compare yourself with someone else when there's only one of you?
Yeah, exactly.
You are one of
Exactly.
one. You cannot be compared. There is no second of you. तो
वो देखें we and it's easy to talk about it when you say कि ये लोग ये करते हैं, right? But I think we were also, or at least I was also maybe guilty of it early on in my career, and it comes with maybe a little bit of experience, but more than experience, it comes with a lot of self-awareness. It comes with a lot of knowing about yourself, and that can only come when you're doing a lot of self-reflection. I think that's something that's not taught in schools or in universities, because that's the key tool for growth, personal growth, and I'm talking about development and personal growth. जितना हम इंटरनलाइज करेंगे अपने एक्सपीरियंसेस को और सेल्फ रिफ्लेक्ट करेंगे, उतने ही उनसे हम फिर लर्न करके डेवलप करेंगे और आगे बढ़ेंगे. बिकॉज अगर हम इंटरनलाइज नहीं करेंगे, देन वी आर जस्ट गोइंग थ्रू लाइफ, वी आर गोइंग थ्रू द मोशंस, एंड that is a tragedy because एक ही जिंदगी मिली है. We have only one go at it, why waste it? So वो भी I think all of that just ties in. It's just becoming switched on. I think बहुत time गुजर जाता है हमारी जिंदगी में before we flick that switch and we become turned on कि यार हाँ, all this shit actually means something. We need to contribute. We need to be proactive about it. It can't be just that we're going through it, right? So वो एक है.
But when you look at it this way, right? Again, कि भाई there's so much going around, and you are one of one, and you can't look at others for comparison. This question comes up for a lot of people that, okay, then how do I look at success? How do I define success? मेरी personal life का success या मेरी business life का success? So how would you define success in either sort of category?
हाँ, ये भी बड़ा philosophical हो जाता है, right? So in a success again comes down to how everyone defines it, and for me in a team setting it has now become, and this is going to be थोड़ा सा वो different. So I've been now propagating people to on an individual level to open up, be more vulnerable, and therefore open themselves up to trusting one another, right? Once
Right.
you've got trust, you will start to have respect. Once you have respect for each other, you will start to enjoy working together. और उस enjoyment में जब आप काम करेंगे और productive होना शुरू हो जाएंगे, तो जो भी निकल के आएगा, I'll say that again, जो भी निकल के आएगा वो success होगा. राइट ये नहीं कहा मैंने कि आपने सब कर लिया, अब आप एंजॉय कर रहे हैं और आपने वॉल्यूम अचीव कर ली तो वो सक्सेस हो गया. नहीं, जो भी निकल के आएगा वो सक्सेस होगा, बिकॉज you had fun doing it, you were authentic while you were doing it, and you made good connections, and so on and so forth, right? So yeah, in a team setting, I think now that's where I'm settling on the definition of success for myself, right?
That's a tough one. That's a really tough one क्योंकि जो भी निकल के आएगा is very, I mean, दिल बड़ा चाहिए उसके लिए.
दिल बड़ा चाहिए, बिकॉज एक तो उसके साथ बाय द वे पैराफिलिया होगा. सो फॉर एग्जांपल, अगर आप एक कंपनी में हैं और केपीआई था कि वॉल्यूम अचीव करनी है बट आपने नहीं की, तो वो आपको ग्रेड डाउन मिलेगा, बट स्क्रू दैट, राइट? सो बिकॉज जो वो करने में अचीव आपने सारी चीजें सीखी हैं, वी जस्ट टॉक्ड अबाउट फेलियर एंड वी टॉक्ड अबाउट लर्निंग्स एंड इंटरनलाइजिंग एंड सेल्फ रिफ्लेक्शन, वो सक्सेस ही हो गया ना, बिकॉज नेक्स्ट ईयर यू गोना बी स्ट्रॉन्गर, यू गोना बी बेटर, यू गोना बी मोर अवेयर, you're going to know yourself better, you're going to know the other person better. So for me, that's success, right? On a personal front, initially, so everyone has a story, everyone has their own sets of struggles, everyone whatever. तो मेरा एक बड़ा क्लियर होता था कि यार मुझे फाइनेंशियल फ्रीडम चाहिए और मुझे फाइनेंशियल स्टेबिलिटी चाहिए और अपनी फैमिली के लिए ये प्रोवाइड करना है, और जिस दिन मैं ये कर लूंगा मेरे लिए वो सक्सेस होगा, उसके बाद सारा बोनस है, राइट? सो that was something individually that I used to look at as success. And now when I'm in a phase where I'm a little bit more self-aware, when I'm looking at these things a bit more deeply, I don't know what that is, and to be honest, I think it's something that I'm still chasing after. Things that I have boiled it down to is trying to live in the moment, trying to be a bit more present. I fail every day, but I try again. Whether it's being a good husband, whether it's being a good son, whether it's being a good father, a good team leader, it's basically boiling down to being a better version of myself every day, and doing better than what I did yesterday. I'm still not there at all. I'm nowhere close. So I wouldn't say कि अभी success आ गया या नहीं आ गया, but I think I might be a little bit successful every day if I'm able to improve a little bit every day. So that's what is coming down.
Japanese phrase kaizen आ गया मुझे याद.
हाँ, वो तो continuous improvement वाली चीज आ गई. वो काइजन से मुझे सिर्फ फैक्ट्रियां और मशीनें और वो सब आ जाता है, because that's where it originated from. But yeah.
But what's interesting is, so I mean, I think all of us are wired to think of success from a financial perspective because it's very tangible and quantifiable.
Yeah.
And it's easy because you want to go after something tangible and quantifiable. And this was challenged. And again, I was challenged again, like you, me and millions of others think the same way. Can a financial freedom, financial stability, and, sort of be able to provide for your family. When this notion was challenged, I said, okay, fine, let's open this up. Okay, you said, I'm open to thinking about it. I'll tell you where I ended up on this. When this notion was challenged, I heard, it took me about 8-9 months reading, listening to different things. And I came across this one definition that has sat with me and I'm digesting it. And now I feel that this is actually a pretty good one. They defined as you have attained success if the lives of those who you touch improves after they come in contact with you, right? So they're at a certain level, they come in contact with you through work, personal, family, whatever, and their lives are able to take a step up or improve, right? And I really thought about it. I said, wow, this is powerful, right? So let's say, someone joins your team, fresh grad out of IBA, participates in your team for 2 years and boom, suddenly gets the offer of a lifetime, you're volunteering your time, you're playing tennis with your kids, whatever it is. I thought this was something very interesting and it really sat.
It's very profound. Yeah, it's very profound. I've come across the same as well. And I think that matters, right? So being present in the moment का बड़ा ये एक हिस्सा है, because when you're talking to anyone, whether it's your team member, your family member, anyone outside, if you're really present in the moment, then you're really engaging with them, you're really listening to them, you're listening to understand and then to respond, and you will end up adding value because you haven't gone through your life not doing anything, right? तो 18-19 साल कुछ करते हुए गुजरे हैं, अगर उसके बारे में थोड़ा सोचा है तो कुछ तो चीजें वो कर दी होंगी कैटेगराइज के, यार हाँ ये मैंने सीखा है जिंदगी में.
Exactly.
तो अगर आप वो डिस्टिल करके किसी तरह पहुंचा देंगे आगे, So you've just added value, and if you're adding value in every interaction, there's no way the other person is not better off for having spoken with you or interacted with you.
Exactly. We've taken up a lot of time. I'm gonna ask you a last question, and this is your passion point. Why is there no good sports management in Pakistan? A country that is so passionate about sports. It's in the top three of, I mean, you're a marketeer. You go after the sports, sort of the affinity, and you get everything. Yet sports management is a disaster here. Why is that?
Yeah.
You even studied this.
Yeah, I actually wrote a paper on the Pakistan Football Federation as part of my course,
I didn't even know
and
there was
उसमें
a confederation.
yeah, और उसमें sad part यही है कि I think politics is the answer. I think that got involved really early on in our sports, and the way it functions is कि everything has to report to the Pakistan Sports Board, which is either
Hmm.
under a interprovincial coordination committee, minister, या फिर पहले वो direct होती थी. तो बिकॉज उसमें पॉलिटिशियंस और ये वाली चीज़ें इन्वॉल्व हो गई, तो वो इट नेवर वेंट इनटू द हैंड्स ऑफ द प्रोफेशनल्स. एंड ये हम कहते हैं बड़ी आसानी से पाकिस्तान को हैं, और उसको डिस करना हमें आसान लगता है, लेकिन बाय द वे काफ़ी सारे बड़े मुल्कों में भी यही प्रॉब्लम है. वहाँ पे बस थोड़ा सा इवॉल्व हो गया, और थोड़ा सा पॉलिटिशियंस के हाथ से अब थोड़े से ग्रीडी इंडिविजुअल्स में के हाथों में आ गया, लेकिन वो एसेंशियली प्रॉब्लम वही है. So I think पाकिस्तान में यही मसला था. I mean, why would if you were to ask me my dream job, it would be to be the CMO of PCB, right? It would be that, but I would never take it up because I know it would be short-lived. It would have so much politics. It would have absolutely no professionalism, no room, no autonomy to do any good. तो फिर क्या फायदा, अपनी अपनी जिंदगी क्यों खराब करे कोई बंदा. हमारी फुटबॉल फेडरेशन हैज बीन अंडर अ फीफा नॉर्मलाइजेशन कमिटी फॉर द लास्ट 2 years, एंड बिफोर दैट आल्सो बीन बैंड बाय फीफा. उसमें कुछ नहीं हो रहा. पीएचएफ में ड्रामे ही होते रहते हैं, पाकिस्तान स्क्वॉश फेडरेशन में ड्रामे होते रहते हैं, स्नूकर, वेट लिफ्टिंग, वो सब आपने देखा हुआ है. मतलब आई थिंक यू स्पोकन टू तलत तालिब एज वेल, एंड यू सीन कि
He
उसके
told a
क्या
great
हालात है.
story of क्या हाल है वो, मतलब, and he came fourth in those हालात, वो बेचारा fourth आया.
Yeah, and I'm sure Arshad Nadeem के साथ भी यही मसला होगा with the javelin and everything, right? And these are just people who made it abhi to the forefront. Imagine the people who couldn't make it. So it's boiling down to one factor, and that factor also, by the way, comes into the way the country is also being run and the way it is. There's a prayer that I always make in my prayers to Allah is give us mukhlis hukmran, right? And that's like just people with pure intentions, and pure love for the country. And if you've got that, then to be honest, I think that's the foundation from where things will start to get better.
I think you should add one additional point to that. You should say mukhlis plus people with common sense. क्योंकि मुखलिस तो एक मिल गया था हमें, लेकिन वो दूसरी चीज शायद
हाँ,
थोड़ी.
वो अभी हमें एक मुखलिस मिल गया था, लेकिन बाकी फिर रह गया. You're right.
Adil, thank you so much. It was a really nice talk. Really enjoyed having you on. Thank you for taking out the time.
Same
And
here, Faizan.
look forward to more continued conversations. And thank you everyone for tuning in to our episode. Subscribe to the channel and check out the next episode next week. Stay tuned. Bye bye.